Are you exhausted from running on the hamster wheel of life? Do you feel like you followed all the rules, did all the right things, yet still question, is this really it? Maybe you've dreamt about a totally different career path, but quickly brushed the thought aside because you missed your chance. If so, you're likely not living the happily ever after you once dreamed of. But welcome to the club. You're not alone. Many women had these same thoughts, including myself. Hi, I'm Kristen Latini, a wife, twin mom, and cat mom who walked away from the corporate career I'd built to pursue entrepreneurship. I created this podcast to learn from women who have already done it. Our guests have built their own career paths outside the traditional 9-to-5. They'll share their personal journeys, the challenges they face, and the lessons they learned along the way. From there, we'll use their inspiration and insights to help us take baby steps to build our own fairy tales. So, whether you're looking to start your own business, make a career change, or simply live a more fulfilling life, this podcast is for you. Consider yourself sprinkled with fairy dust, and let's go. Happy New Year, and welcome back to another episode of Build Your Own Fairy Tale. If you've ever struggled to find clothes for your little ones, you've already got something in common with today's guest. But where this connection story gets interesting is that former NASCAR spokesmodel Maddy Fero decided to do something about this dilemma. She dragged out her sewing machine and started making clothes for her son. And when other people started noticing and asking about those clothes, Maddy and her husband decided this could be something. So she created a kids' clothing company called Little Rad Things. Please welcome Maddy Fero. Maddy, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to learn more about the Little Red clothing company that you've got going on over there. But first, to get to know you a little better, can you tell us if you could be a fairy tale or fictional character, who you would be and why?
Oh my gosh, that is such a tough question. I feel like I would pick maybe like Katniss Everdeen or Hermione Granger. I like the strong females that are loud and like confident. Those would probably be my first two picks. I don't know. I'm like in the middle of reading the ACOTAR series that people are like super, I'm like into it too, but I wouldn't say that I want to be her per se. So
we've had one response with, what's her name? Feyre or something? I've read the first of the series. So we've had one response with that person, but otherwise we do typically get strong female. So that's like spot on. I've seen all the Katniss Hunger Games. I've seen all of those things. So I like that.
Yeah. I really probably am mostly like a Hermione Granger. I love that she's like very smart and very quick and she's strong. Like those are all qualities that I think I possess. I don't know. We'll see. My husband might debate me.
The husbands are always going to debate, but it's okay to say we've got them.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, awesome. So then getting into the business side of things, can you take us on your career journey and how you started a children's clothing company? I'm not sure if you were always in clothing or, how you got there, but take us on that journey, please.
Yeah, no way. My journey has been really bizarre. So I actually studied broadcast journalism in school with the aspirations to be a sports reporter. I moved down to Charlotte right out of college. I got a job with the local ABC affiliate, and I was like bootstrapping local feel-good stories for the website. I did that for about a year and a half, and then I got hired into NASCAR, and I had the coolest job ever for 3 years. I was a spokesmodel / brand representative for NASCAR when Sprint was the title sponsor of the series, and as a young 22-year-old, I got to travel around the country and be at NASCAR races, interviewing celebrities like Vince Vaughn. And it was like the most surreal thing. So looking back on my career, like knowing now where I am, I think intentionally everything served a purpose to get me where I am. But it's been a funny ride because I went from that into a marketing role when Sprint left the sport. I did marketing for Topgolf for a little over 2 years. Absolutely adored it. They were located in Dallas, Texas, and I happened to work here in Charlotte. And like my growth trajectory with them was to move to Dallas. And with my husband being in NASCAR, we were not leaving. So I bounced from that career to working for a fitness franchise here in Charlotte. And that's really kind of where the entrepreneurial angle started to come into my life. I was a business coach coaching several different franchise partners on how to basically market their gyms to get more people in the doors and retain their members that they had. I learned so much in that position, but I was with them through the pandemic, which was extremely stressful, as you can imagine. And so in my downtime, I decided to start sewing. Like I had a sewing machine in a closet from a Christmas a couple years before. And my son Paxton was, I think, around 8 months at the time. And I just was like not liking what I was finding online for him. Like Old Navy stuff was really boring. There was some like small shop stuff out there, but nothing that like screamed my aesthetic. So I just started sewing and posting what he was wearing. And I started having like these long lost friends from college that I hadn't talked to in years that were like, can I send you a crib sheet? Can you make that into some like cool overall type thing for my son? Or can you make my niece and nephew things? And that's really where like it started to click for my husband. He was like, I think you have something here. Like you're coaching these other people how to run a business. Why don't you start a business? And that was where it all started.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a pretty windy path, but I feel like the best stories are always windy. With the windy
For
path.
sure.
So, okay, once he turned to you and said, I think you're onto something, then what? Like, what were those first, even logistical steps of like, do I find a manufacturer? Did I build a website? Like, what were those steps for you?
It was really honestly scary, but Google was my best friend. Like I first started to Google, like, how do I get an LLC? How do I get, an EIN number from the government? Like, what are the proper things I need to do here to be legitimate? And, I started to go down that rabbit hole. And then I found out I was pregnant again. And I was like, okay, like maybe this is an opportunity for me to not work for somebody else anymore. So I should take this pretty seriously. And not knowing a lot about apparel, like I went in pretty blind. We decided to screen print our first run of t-shirts. So that's really kind of where it started, was like, okay, let's find a local screen printer that's willing to do so many units for us. And I just kind of worked out like how many I thought would be appropriate to start with and just went from there. Honestly, in retrospect, knowing what I know now, I'm like, oh my gosh, how rookie was I, but it worked. And I think that's like the biggest thing about business that I always like to try to share with people is like, just start. Like for me, as soon as I got an LLC, I was like, well, no turning back now. Like we're going. And then you like get a website and you're like, well, I just told all my friends I'm doing this, so I better be committed. And even to this day, I'm like, well, I'm just figuring it out day after day,
And it's very coincidental that one of the big themes I took away from all the episodes I did in 2024 was like, just start. You're never going to be ready. It's never going to be perfect. You're always going to learn, but like, you're going to look back and be like, oh, I should have done this sooner because look how great now I figured out how to do this. Like you just figure it out, like you said.
Yeah, I literally just figured it out every day. And it's funny, even looking back, like we were talking about our first run of t-shirts and we did them screen printed with a fellow person in NASCAR that we knew that was trying to start like an entity. And I mean, some of the first t-shirts were so bad. Like David and I laugh about it. We're like, well, we still sold them, but like, we're like, oh my gosh, our quality has come like light years from that. Like my knowledge has exploded. And I think what's so cool about business ownership is, yes, like I stepped away from a corporate career, but there's always this opportunity where I could go back someday, and how valuable I would be to somebody with the immense amount of knowledge I've learned from just doing things and like putting myself out there and being willing to learn. So that's probably one of the best parts about starting a business.
Ooh, I love that reminder because I spent 13 years in corporate America before stepping away to pursue my own things. I'm like, oh, I like that angle. Of course, I can always go back and I have all these amazing skills to bring with me.
Yeah, I think like if anything too, like being a business owner, I think can be really, I don't want to say threatening because that's such a harsh word, but eye-opening to people that aren't, because you're really challenging yourself in such a different way than, other people are willing to.
And I like to remind my husband, I'm like, I learn something every day, whether I want to or not. I am going to show up and find something new, but oh, okay, that's how we're going to do this. Or, oh, that's how they did this. Like, oh, okay, I should change it up. So then you mentioned that you had this downtime when you started, which I find hard to believe with an 8-month-old. And then adding in a second kid to the mix. Like, how do you balance figuring all this out, running a business, and motherhood?
Yeah, I think my biggest tip for balance, quote unquote, with having, children and operating a business that's like about to do $1 million this year, which is insane to me, is
Congrats.
really, thank you. I know I don't talk about it enough or celebrate it enough. So I figured, I was like, oh, I'll pump myself up today. As funny as that is, for me, the biggest thing is understanding that there's never anything that's necessarily a 911 emergency in the scope of business. I really try every day to go into a mindset of like, what is a non-negotiable for the day? Like, what are 3 to 5 things that I have to get done today to consider it a success towards the business? What's going to lead towards the most profitability or the most people seeing my website today? And prioritize based off of that. And then I just kind of like allocate anything else that I can get done as a success. But like, if I can't go to bed at night and one, like feel like I'm getting some decent sleep or a little bit of me time, I have a tendency to like watch 30 minutes of a TV show while I'm like half, KO'd in my bed. Just for me time, like if I can't have those moments or my kids don't feel like I'm engaged with them, then I consider that a failure. So really for me, it's always like, okay, how do I look at my day and strategically prioritize what's going to lead to the most growth? And as long as I get that done, the day has been a success and the business moves forward. And then I can focus on my children and anything else is a victory. So I think we have to give ourselves a lot of grace and understand that as long as you're doing a few simple tasks every day that move things forward, then you're succeeding because you're moving the needle. You're not going to conquer Rome in one day.
No, baby steps, baby steps. But now you made me think too, because sometimes, like, especially when we have little ones, they say I didn't do this when my kids were that little. My kids are 10 now. But if you're starting a business, when you do have little ones, I feel like the topic of childcare is important because, nap time, I don't know, you tell me if I'm wrong, but feels like it's not enough.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not enough. Where I'm officially in that stage with mine. So our youngest is 3, our oldest is 5. And because the 5-year-old doesn't nap really ever, the 3-year-old by default doesn't want to nap and typically doesn't now. So it's tough. Like, I mean, I will say I work weekends a lot, but like I strategically have to pick and choose when I'm okay with like them having an hour of TV that they wouldn't normally have so I can knock something out or do a meeting. It's tough, but you just have to give yourself grace and understanding and know that like businesses don't just go away. I think that's one of the biggest things I've had to learn is like my timeline is not the equivalent to somebody else's timeline. And someone who may have tremendous growth right now may burn out at some point. Like there's a plan and purpose for the way that I'm growing, and I just need to enjoy every moment of it. And also know like my kids are only little once. And I throw around the idea all the time that I might have one more. But I also am like, it's the only time I'm going to have 2, and they're only going to be 3 and 5 for a year. So, enjoy every moment that I get. So,
Yeah. Oh, those are all real juicy reminders. And like, oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
yeah, it's easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. I definitely have my moments where, my husband will be like, hey, that can wait. But I try really hard to be like methodical and in the moment with them as much as possible.
Yeah. And I find too, because I get so excited about my projects, my work, like for me to think of it on the weekend and maybe go sneak off and do something if I had the time, like it doesn't feel like work. It feels like I'm excited to go do it versus in corporate America. If I had to go do it on the weekend, I would be very cranky about it.
Same. And I think it's cool. Like you're working for yourself and you're controlling the outcome, not somebody else. I actually just had that talk with my brother yesterday. I'm like, because he's still in corporate America and he was telling me about all the meetings he had in one day. And I'm like, oh, I do not miss that at all. Like the outcomes and the objectives usually aren't there or they take forever. I feel very blessed that I am very, concise with what I want to talk about and what I need to do. So,
yeah, for sure. No, I always say I miss the people. Some of my favorite people were in that job or in that company, and I miss the paycheck, but nothing else. I do not miss the back-to-back meetings all day, every day. Also, can you talk a little bit about, I saw on the website too about the importance of sustainability and American made. Can you talk about how and why those are values within your company?
yeah, for sure. So we have always wanted to be American made first and foremost because we are proud to be American. And we want to help people here in our country. It's a lot easier, I can say that, to go manufacture overseas. Like people over there want the business and they are, willing to do whatever to have your business and make things really quickly and make things really nice. But at the end of the day, like being able to do stuff here and pull our money here, keep our money in our country is just something that my husband and I are really passionate about. So that was something we always wanted to do. And then as we got into manufacturing, we learned how hard it was, especially as a new small business in apparel. You have such a large minimum to meet to be able to manufacture here. That's why initially we went, overseas. And then it's so wild, but I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason. But manufacturer tried to open an extension of her manufacturing business about 30 minutes from us, our first year of operations. And me
Amazing.
being me, I was like, I'm going to meet this woman and she's going to work with us. And I just had this attitude of like, I'm going to make this happen. I met with her back then, like 2 years ago, and she was like, this is cute. You're doing this, I wish you all the best of luck. If you need anything, let me know, but not right now. And I've just been able to nurture that relationship. And finally, we were at a stage where we had grown so much that she was like, okay, like she is very serious. She is who she said she was. And yeah, I want to work with you now. So we're very fortunate to have the opportunity to produce here, which is really exciting and, help foster some jobs here in the States through our manufacturing. And then from a sustainability side, not a lot of people realize that when things are produced really fast and sold very cheaply, that there's typically high rate of return, damages, just so many bad things that happen, If you haven't seen the documentary that's on HBO, go watch it. But a lot of stuff ends up in like Africa and they don't have anything to do with it. Like it just becomes waste. So we've always been really prideful on, having methodology behind how our products are made. In the kids space too, it's so important that your products are made really high quality. A lot of our products go through a certification process to ensure that they haven't been touched by specific chemicals. There's just a lot that goes into it to feed to a better society and a better world. So that's why.
That seems like things you can feel good about. So I like it.
Yeah, no, we take a lot of pride in our sourcing and manufacturing. And what's been really cool about moving to the States too is like even down to the knitting of the fabric is happening here, which was something that with my education, I wasn't even aware of. My manufacturer shared with me like a lot of brands that are made in the United States are actually still importing goods from overseas. So their fabrics and their threads and buttons and different things will still come from out of the United States, whereas through her, we've been able to bring 99% of things back. The only major thing that we aren't making here that's a part of our package is like the plastic bag, as crazy as that is, that it goes in, that says LRT on it, because there's not a good manufacturer that does that she's aware of at this time.
Yeah, who knew? Can you speak a little bit to that growth journey too? Like how you went from, sewing your own version of it to then, I don't know, are you in stores or just selling so much online?
Yeah, so we are in a little over 200 stores across the country at this point. No major retailer. We were tested in one retailer early on, and in retrospect, I wish I would have waited on that just because our quality isn't anywhere near like where it is now. That was really cool and such a good learning experience for me on the retailer side of like what I need to negotiate and decide on before I take that plunge again. That process has been crazy. So starting out, like a lot of it was organic growth just through posting on all the social media platforms. So we are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, you name it, we're on it. And just being really consistent with posting there. And then I dove into a lot of education on Facebook ads. And so through some Facebook ads efforts, we've been able to scale a lot more. And of course, partnering with influencers. I totally recommend that. If you're not doing that as a business owner, it's a miss. It's such an easy win. And there are more than enough influencers that want to work with companies. We've been very, very fortunate.
Interesting. I have two follow-ups. I have a lot more, but I'm going to go with two because you and I were a little bit lamenting about social media before we started, but you just mentioned like being on all the channels. So did you start doing them all yourself? Was it at a point where you grew, you're like, okay, I got to outsource this bad boy? Like, how do you keep up with all that? Because I feel like that's a topic that so many small business owners I speak to are like, oh, the social media game. So can you speak to that real quick?
No, it's all me. It's still to this day is all me. It's honestly, it's definitely exhausting. Don't get me wrong. Like I have my days where I'm like, I don't want to post anything on here, but I know how valuable it is to my brand. I'm even starting to try to lean more into my own brand, like me as a person versus just Little Rad Things. I think it's so important that people understand more of who I am, even though they see some of that through Little Rad Things. Like they can come see my page or maybe find me first, and then that leads them to Little Rad Things as well. But it's always been me. It's a lot. Like, I'm not going to downplay that at all. I'm thankful for scheduler tools for things like Pinterest because I can sit down for an hour and a half and have 30 days worth of pins scheduled out. And then I don't really have to touch it for another 30 days, which always goes by so fast. I'm like, oh, I just did this. But I will say, I think the connection that you can make through social media is so incredible that I don't know if it'll ever be something that I truly give up until, maybe I want to sell my business someday or, I have an investor. But at this point in time, it's going to be me. I think it's really unique that I can have a company, whatever you want to call it, and have 100,000 people following me and be able to like connect with them on a personal level of like, well, here's my day today, or like, here's the product that showed up. Ask them for feedback, ask them for questions. One of my strong suits is I'm a very sarcastic person. So what's been fun is like my Instagram really has started to take off from just posting silly mom related content about like my toddler screaming at me because I didn't give him a fruit snack or like, just the things that happen in everyday life that we're all feeling. So yeah, social media is crazy because it is a lot to manage, but it's something that I truly enjoy. So that's why I like managing it. And it lets me see, moms who buy from me go from having one kid to two kids to their kids being babies to then seeing them as toddlers. And that's been really special too.
Yeah. No, I mean, I do love the ability to connect, but sometimes, yes, the planning and we know what content am I going to put up? That part gets people down. So it's good to know. And then also when you mentioned the influencers, I'm just curious how you find these people, or do you just, it's somebody you follow and you're like, hey, do you want to work together type thing?
Yeah. So early on, it was a lot of people that I followed. I would just like cold try to DM them. I did learn very quickly that a lot of the people that are really big usually don't respond to that, especially if you don't have a large following. So starting out really, really micro is huge, especially if you're a new entrepreneur listening to this. Like, go find people who have just a couple thousand followers. Like, give them a chance. Honestly, a lot of those people are some of the most reliable and dedicated people that will be, attached to your brand because they're so excited that you reached out to them, that you want to send them anything, that you care to get to know them. So for me, I started finding like moms that had like really good content of their kids, whether it be a lot of it on their Instagram or not. And I would just DM and be like, hey, I would love to send you a couple things from our collection if you wouldn't mind snapping a few photos. Bigger accounts, typically my message would be different. Like I would just be like, hey, I'd love to work with you, or, hey, I'd love to send you something, no strings attached, so that they're like, okay, I don't have to do anything here per se. But then like truly trying to build that relationship means a lot. I have a couple of influencers that I work with right now that have pretty large accounts, and like they just tag me innately when their kids are in my stuff now on the day to day because I have nurtured that relationship and I truly care about them. Like one specifically, I won't say her name, but like her family went through a pretty traumatic summer. They had close relative pass away. And, I saw that happening on her Instagram and I made a point to like message her and, sentiment with her that, I lost my dad when I was young and, I feel for them and I'm sending them prayers. And that really makes a big difference. Like truly caring about people makes a big difference. I think a lot of people in the business space anymore are just here to sell real quick and make some money and like not truly build something that means something and has values. So that's like my biggest advice with the influencer thing is like truly try to build relationships and start small because the big people, as you grow, will care. It takes them a little bit longer because they do have so many brands that want to work with them versus people that are smaller.
Yeah. And I feel like it just is another like proof point. And like, it's the relationship. This isn't networking, isn't like, can you buy my thing? Right. Or can you help me? It's we're getting to know each other. You're going to think of me when this comes up next time. You might not need anything now, but like, I'm here when you need me. Let me know. Like, it's just not an instant exchange. It's an ongoing relationship is really what I'm coming back to.
Yeah, absolutely. And even like not, I know it seems weird to not ask anything of them when like it is your money, you're sending them product, you've got money invested into the product. But some of the best influencer relationships I've had, I've just asked if I could send them stuff and like not expected anything from them. And then like I've gotten new product and I just send it again. Like I'll just send stuff over and over and try to nurture the relationship. And eventually they're like, oh my gosh, this person loves me. They're sending me stuff all the time, Or at least that's the perception that I get. It's like they're just shocked that I'm so willing to be so giving without asking anything in return. Because I think a lot of the influencer space now is, expected to produce and expected to sell. And I would even say on the inverse of that, as a brand, what's also hard is there is an influencer culture that expects to be paid. And I sometimes get DMs that are like, hey, do you want to collaborate with me? And it's somebody I've never heard of before. And I'm like, yeah, let's talk. And then they're like, okay, well, here's my package list. And I'm like, okay, like I love the hustle and I congratulate you on that. But like, I'm not doing this at this time. Which hopefully that doesn't sound bad, but I just, it's a very interesting culture of how social media has evolved. And I think if you're looking to start something, don't let some people that are sending you packages discourage you or feel wrong for gifting products. I said it. Some influencer may hear this and get upset, but as a small brand, like for myself, like gifted, it works. And yeah, I'm going on a whole tangent there, but that's my perspective.
I like it. I just finished reading The Go-Giver, which was recommended by Dr. Laura Sokola on her episode late last year. And it was all about this giving. So it's totally resonating for me.
Awesome. Good. Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with gifting to influencers or anyone. I'm a big believer what you put out in the world is what you get back, whether it be immediate or it takes some time. So I just am a firm believer of always like trying to go above and beyond for anyone that comes into my circle. And then if they don't stick, then they're not the right person for me. And that's okay as well.
Yep. And I think just drawing it back to them, the social media and the content and like digital creatives, like it's about the value. So yours happens to be a physical product that you can bring, but it's also like, what content are you sharing? Are you teaching anything? Are you sharing any values? Like everything is giving. It's just, this is a very immediate, like obviously this product sitting in my hands costs money, but your time is money too that goes into everything else you put out there. So it's all coming together for me. What would you say your biggest struggle has been in managing all the moving parts of the business? Like if you could wave a magic wand and be like, poof, this is taken care of. What would that look like?
Yeah, probably my biggest fault as a business owner is being able to feel comfortable giving things up. I think we put so much time and effort in that early grind stage of starting and getting to our first 10 sales, 20 sales, you name it, that when you get to a place where I'm at right now, I really need to start feeling comfortable delegating and like offloading things. And like I've recently offloaded my email management for the most part to a freelancer. And I just brought on somebody to help with Facebook advertising. And for me, it's like so stressful to step back and trust somebody else to do that. And I know a lot of business owners say that as they grow. It's just like, you have to like understand that no one's going to do it to the level that you do, but as long as they do it good enough, that's all that matters. So that's been really hard. And then in the apparel space, the other major challenge that I would put kind of coinciding with this one is just always having inventory and having the financial flexibility to continue to scale at the rate that we are. So one thing that's really hard for us, for anyone who wants to be in apparel and hear my story, is The bigger you get, the more inventory you need. And selling out of inventory is not a great thing. So we've had multiple times now where we've stocked certain items that are our best sellers. And because I wasn't smart enough to forecast, right, we would sell out very quickly. And then with manufacturing timelines, it takes, 6 to 8 weeks to restock it, which is not the best when you're running ads and you have customers that are very ready to buy. So,
yeah, it's a problem, a good problem, but a problem nonetheless.
yes, it is for sure. And, the craziest thing about manufacturing that if you're involved in it, about is just you're usually paying ahead of getting your product. So it's always like that vicious cycle of like, okay, I'm out this much, but it's going to come back as soon as we get the product and start selling it. So for me, I'm always in like a mind pool with that. My husband is very much more like the risk person. I'm risk adverse. So I'm always like, oh my gosh, are we going to be okay? Like trying to like mentally figure it out.
Yeah. That inventory problem that you reference, I feel like I hear about often on Shark Tank. So I'm like, oh, are we going to see you on Shark Tank sometime soon?
I actually have a friend, believe it or not. It's so weird. That was also one of the NASCAR spokesmodels. She had just ended when I was hired, and she started a brand and she was on Shark Tank. She started about the same time that I did, and her brand is really cool. It's called Tucky, and basically it's a belt for tucking your shirts into crop tops without just like doing what I have a tendency to do, just cut straight across if I want a shirt to be a crop top. But yeah, really cool. Small world.
It is a small world, although I will not be cutting my shirts to crop tops. Sorry.
Moms
Yeah.
over here.
Yes. Okay. So then are any advice left? Because you've shared so many great gems here, but any advice left? So somebody who's just getting started, whether it's apparel or a different sort of entrepreneurial endeavor, what would you share with them based on now what you've learned over these past few years?
Yeah, take it day by day. Like the more that you can break down and celebrate daily wins and understand that every day compounds, the better. I think for myself, I put a lot of pressure on myself to be a certain size and grow so much within a certain year. But the longer I'm in this game, the more that I'm realizing like it's literally just daily victories that compound and stack up. And that no two stories are the same are like the biggest things that help keep me sane in a lot of ways and grounded and motivated. Because it's easy to like look around and you don't want to compare. But you do look around and you're like, man, they seem to be growing so fast, And nobody's the same whatsoever. And the fact that you even just started is the biggest part of the battle.
And to your point, nobody's the same. And you have no idea how many years or days or months they were pushing before this finally broke for them, So it feels like, wow, they're so far ahead and they did it overnight. But for the most part, I feel like we're all just compounding those. I love how you say compounding the daily victories.
Yeah, just stacking the wins one after the other, and nobody's perfect. I mean, I've made so many mistakes in the last 3 years of growing my brand. It happens all the time. And the best part about it is I just get to like masterfully try to figure out how to move on, because it's like nobody's coming to solve it for me. Just figure it out, right?
Yeah. Well, are you willing to share one of those big mistakes?
Recently we, with a manufacturer, decided to do some long sleeves for fall. This year, we were going to have like this incredible fall lineup because the year before I like didn't bring in long sleeves. And then a majority of my customers were like, okay, like we're in Florida, but we still like long sleeves in the winter, like could you bring in some long sleeve stuff? So we decided to do a run with our manufacturer. They were supposed to size scale a certain sleeve length for us, and somehow their wires got crossed and they didn't make the sleeves on the 4Ts to the youth mediums long enough. So the T's sleeve length was kind of like 3/4. Obviously not ideal for little boys or girls. I mean, the girls could probably pull off the 3/4 a little better. But I basically just had to get the shirts and figure out the best way to sell them and remanufacture them. And it was terrifying in the moment because it was, several thousands of dollars worth of t-shirts now that were imperfect, but then half of them were okay. What's cool, this can go back to just building a community and like being true to yourself, is I went to my VIP customers and did a video that I sent, like explaining what was happening and what I was going to do with these shirts, like put them on our website for half the cost of what we're going to sell them for. And they sold us out super fast. Like they understood it. They've sentimented with me, like how difficult this was going to be for us, and sold us out. And now half of those people are like, this is my favorite shirt that my son wears, which is incredible.
Butter sleeves.
Yeah, they're like, it's really good. And yeah, it worked out, but it was hard. It was definitely hard.
Thank you for sharing that. It's always just good to hear, like, okay, other people, stumble too, right? Like that was not what you were planning.
No, it wasn't. I honestly have one other good one. This one's kind of funny and embarrassing, but so with inventory, right, we're always paying out in advance for it, for a portion of it. And I had some projections done for like our biggest run ever of a restock. And I went to place that order. And instead of like thinking of alternative ways to finance it, I put it on a no limit credit card before we went on vacation. And in the middle of our vacation, the credit card company decided that there was a limit. I had like a mental breakdown for a day on vacation as I like strategically figured out where we were going to move things around at. But some of those moments they're so awful in the moment. I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but then you get through it and you figure it out. And like, I actually look at that now and laugh, as horrible as it felt in the moment. And my kids were napping and my husband's like kind of laughing at me, honestly, because he's like, you're going to be fine. Like, why are you crying? Like, we just figure it out. But they're great stories. I feel like, as a business owner, if it was easy, there'd be nothing to tell when you truly make it to be big. Like, these things happen and it's part of the story. Like, if nothing else, I'm going to have an amazing book someday. So,
Yep. And if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah, for sure. Everyone would take the risk and want the reward. And I would say that's another piece of advice is don't believe everything on the internet either. Like, there are so many coaches and people out there that say they know how to do things and they've never ran a business before. So you definitely have to be careful about that as well.
Yeah, for sure. What dreams do you have for the next chapter of this fairy tale?
The next 3 years, or how far?
However far out you want to go.
Yeah, our ultimate goal is to truly grow to be big enough that we are able to have a team that works for us of hopefully like 10-ish people. I don't know if I'd want to be much bigger than that, quite honestly, but my true vision is to have a team, to be able to have an awesome warehouse in my community outside of Charlotte where we can do events for kids and donation drives and things that really play a larger impact in our community. We get to do some of that now, but it's just so small scale. And then like continue to evolve. I think apparel is the root of what we started this for, but I have such a greater vision of different educational things to bring to children and encourage them to get outside and be good people. So there are a lot of different feeder products that I'm not going to talk about yet because I've always been manifesting them that someday I'll get to bring them on. But really just sky's the limit. Like for us, it's just all about like how can we make like the raddest community out there of parents that like truly want their kids to be like game changers in society, like super educated, enjoy the outdoors, are focused on health and nutrition, like all these values that my husband and I have. So that's where being rad comes from.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Can you please share with our listeners how they can find and join the rad community? Where can they find and connect with you? Learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is just littleradthings.com. And then you can find us on Instagram at the Little Rad Things. That's our name on like every social media platform except for Twitter, I think. And then my personal is just Maddy Fero. I always love to chat to other business owners. So if anyone's listening and has an idea, feel free to shoot me a message and I'll try to help you as best as I can.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing all of this, Maddy. It's so fun to hear about your journey and all the great things ahead. So thank you. Keep doing what you're doing and we'll be watching and cheering for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
How rad was that? I'm sorry, I can't help myself. But seriously, because I work in services and consulting more so than a product space, I find conversations with someone like Maddy even more interesting. Here are my top takeaways. Number one, You heard it. It was a key theme in 2024, but just start. Start taking those baby steps. This leads right into number 2, which is compound your wins. Stack those wins. I love this. You heard of like the habit stacking, right? Is that James Clear? And I love this idea of stacking your wins because they're going to compound and over time, it's really going to push you forward. And number 3, the value of giving to build those relationships, right? If you see someone who you can share with and they're going to benefit, go ahead and do it. There does not have to be an ask or an expectation in return. And this is going to help you find the right people to help build your community, build your brand. They're going to stick around and you're going to support each other along the way. So I love the idea of just giving where you can. And that's all I have for today. We'll be back in another 2 weeks with a brand new episode. So don't forget to hit subscribe or follow from wherever you're listening so you don't miss out. And if you know someone who may benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Last but not least, thank you for being here. I'm not giving up on my dreams, and I hope you won't either. I'm Kristen Latini, and this is Build Your Own Fairy Tale.